Hi guys, my name is Mayowaoye. Welcome back to my channel. Today's tutorial will be on how to make this simple corset dress, a statement dress really. So hit the subscribe button below your screen and let's proceed. So now we'll be starting with our basic bodice pattern, and here is mine, here my front and my back. So I'm going to be starting with the front first. So the first thing I'm going to do with the front is to measure the dress length, and for me I'm going to measure maybe like 34 or 35 inches depending on how long you want it. Then you connect the lines. Now if you look at the picture, you would see that there's a curve around the waistline, so that is what I'm going to be measuring and marking on my pattern right now. So first you just need to go to the center right there and decide how low you want the curve to be, and then you connect all the way to your waist. So you can just do maybe like 6 or 5 inches from your waistline, and then you connect back to your waist. For me, I used about 3.5 to 4 inches, and then I connected to my waist, and that is it right there. So that's my upper part and that's my lower part. So now I'm just going to cut it right there now to separate the upper part and the lower part. So you can see that. Now I'm going to just keep the upper parts aside, and then we work on the lower parts. Now if you look at the picture, you would see that there's a kind of enlarged hip or enlarged parts, like there's a kind of structure to the lower part of the dress. So now to achieve that, I'm going to come right to my hip line and just draw a line out, and then I'm just going to measure maybe like 3 inches or 4 inches. It depends on how wide you want it to be, and then you just measure that. So at my hem also, I'm going to measure maybe 2 inches. So if you measure 3 inches at the hip line, you can just measure maybe 2 or 1 inch at your hem level. So if you measure 5 inches at the hip line, you measure maybe 2 inches or 3 inches at the hem level. You got the drift, right? So for me, I measured 3 inches at my hip line and 1 inch at the hem level. So now I'm just going to connect all of the points. Now I'm going to connect the one at the hip to the waist with the curved part of my French curve. That's what I'm going to use, and then I just like draw a straight line all the way to the hem. So if your pattern has like a sharp curve there, you just blend it in with your French curve. So at the hem also, I'm just going to measure 1 inch allowance right there, and at the side I measure 1 inch seam allowance. So at the waist, when you are cutting on your fabric, remember to measure ½ inch seam allowance for the waist, and that completes it. So that part here is the borderline. We don't really need it. When you're cutting on your fabric, you fold it in. So pretty much that's that. Now let's work on the upper part of the front. So for that, I'm going to get my upper part, and then I'm going to need to draw in my neckline. That is the sweetheart neckline for the dress. So you first decide how low you want the sweetheart neckline to be. So from your armhole level, you can just measure maybe 2 inches up or 1 inch up, depending on how low you want it or the amount of cleavage you want for the dress. So for me, from my armhole level, I just measured like 1 inch, and then I'm going to move to my dart line, and then I'll measure how high I want the sweetheart neckline to be. So from my armhole level, I measured about 3 inches up, and that is it right there. And then now I'm going to connect all of the points. So now I just decided, oh, let me reduce the cleavage points, let me reduce it by another ½ inch, just to give it more a bit of cleavage, just to make it lower and all. So it really all depends on how deep you want your sweetheart or cleavage to be. So now I'm just going to connect all of the lines right now. So I'll connect from there to the depth of my sweetheart neckline, and then I'm then going to connect from there straight to my armhole. So pretty much that's that. And now I'm going to move to my upper dart. So what I have from here to here, I'm going to measure it out, and then I'll measure it from there to there. So if I have 1 inch there, I'll measure 1 inch at that point. Now I'm going to connect it back to my bust point. So pretty much that's that. So now I'm just going to label that my center front and my side front. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to measure my under bust measurements all the way from the top of my pattern. I'll just locate my under bust. Now from each dart leg at the under bust, I'm going to measure ½ inch out from there, and then I'm going to reconnect with the curved part of my French curve to the bust point like I'm doing right now. You can see that. Then now I'm going to draw a straight line back to my waist level. So pretty much that's that. So now all I have to do is to now cut out all of my panels. So cutting out the center front right from there all the way to the top. Right before I continue, let me just like talk about if you want to add a strap to the dress, because the dress, if you look at the picture, it has a strap on it. So you need to decide where you want to place your strap on your dress, and that's it for me there. And then just connect the line straight to your shoulders. So from that point there to the shoulders is going to be known as your strap length. So when you want to cut on your fabric, you just measure what you have on the strap length and you cut appropriately on the fabric. Mind you, you would have to add the length to the length for the back also. Then you just add the two together, and that will be the full total strap length for your dress for both the front and the back. Now I'm just going to continue cutting all of the panels. So I'm going to cut the center front, which is cut out already, and now I'm going to cut the side front all the way. Please add a 1 inch allowance to the side of your panels, and then I'm going to do that right now, and then I'm just going to cut that out. So yeah, that's that. So pretty much, and then this point right there is my borderline, and when I'm cutting on my fabric, I'm just going to fold that in because like we don't really need it. Now let's move on to drafting the back of our pattern. So for that, I'm going to pick up my back pattern, and then I'm going to measure in the dress length, the same dress length I had for the front, which is about 34 to 35 inches. And then I'm going to measure that in. So now the borderline right there is my zipper allowance, going to be known as my zipper allowance. And now at my waistline right there, I'm going to measure in 1/2 inch right there. You can see that. Then I'm going to connect to the top there and connect to the area where my dart line stops, where my dart stops. You can see I've done that. So that's that. So when I'm cutting, I'm just going to cut along that line. So let me just separate the dress now into an upper part and a lower part. So let's work on the lower part of the dress. Now everything I did for the front, I'm also going to do it for the back. So if I measure 3 inches at the hip line of the front, I'll do the same also for the back, and then you just like increase the one for the hem also and connect all of the marks together. So pretty much that's that. Now I'm just adding my allowance, 1 inch to the hem allowance, and then 1 inch side seam allowance. So now I'm just going to cut all of that out right now. I'm trimming off the excess paper on my pattern. So trimming off the excess also along my zipper line, and that's that. So that's all for the back skirt piece. Now for the upper back piece, we need to measure in our neckline. That is how low you want your neckline to be. So from my armhole level right there, I'm going to measure how low I want it to be. So for me, it's 1 inch from my armhole level, and then I'm just going to connect to my um armhole, my actual armhole. So you can see that right now. So at my dart line right there, I'm going to measure 1/2 inch out, 1/2 inch at the other side, and then I'm going to connect to each of my dart legs, and that completes it. So now I'm going to label it. I'm going to label that the center back and also the side back, and add the 1 inch allowance to the side of my patterns. Now decide where you want the back strap to be and connect a line from there to your shoulders, and that's going to be the back strap length. So pretty much now I'm just going to keep cutting all of my panels out, cutting the side back out, and then cutting also the center back out. So I'm just trimming off the zipper line there, and that's pretty much it for my back pattern. And these are all my panels. That's my center front right there, and my side front, center back, side back. Now to avoid your neckline gaping when you're done sewing, you can just pick a dart right on your pattern there before cutting on your fabric. So you do the same also for the other panels, and that's that for that. So you just add your allowances now, add your allowance to the patterns, and then you'll be ready to cut it out. Now for the skirt piece, I'm going to close up my dart because I don't really need it anymore, and then close up that one also for the front. So just tape it down with a paper tape, and that's that for all of that. So this is it all cut out on my fabric. You can see that's that. I've already added in all my allowances, and that's that pretty much. So now it's time to start sewing. Starting with the front panels, I'm going to take out my pins and then arrange all of the panels appropriately. So you just lay it right sides together, and then you sew. So you lay your side front to your center front, and then you sew. So I'm going to be starting my sewing from the hem. I'll begin sewing from the hem all the way to the top. So just measure your allowances. If you have if you added the half-inch allowance to your pattern, you sew by half-inch allowance. So pretty much that's what I'm going to do right now, and that's it complete for one side of my front piece. So you can see that now I have to also sew in my second side front. So and that's what I'm doing right now, by half-inch, sewing by half-inch all the way to the top. Pretty much remember that you need to add interfacing or a stay to your fabric before sewing. So the interfacing or stay you add is what is going to give your bust area the support, the solid support it needs to stand. So now I'm going to continue with this. So if you look at the picture, you see that there's a boning, the attached bonings to the blouse. So now I'm just going to mark the areas where I want to attach my bonings, and that is that. So you can use a bias tape, just sew a bias tape on top of your fabric or whatever you want to use, maybe a ribbon, you sew that in. So I'm just going to color my own paper tape because I'm using the paper tape to just like illustrate that, and that's that. So now once you are done sewing your bias tape, now you just need to insert your bonings into the casing you've created with your bias tape, and that's that for that. And of course you need to add the lining to your dress. So it is at this point where you use your lining to turn in the neckline, just to finish up the raw edges of your neckline and turn it in neatly. So now let's continue. Now I'm going to pick up the skirt piece, that is the lower skirt piece of my dress, and then I'm going to attach my front upper piece to it, so for sewing. Now you can see that I started my sewing from the middle of my dress, and that's because I want everything to align nicely and neatly. So I'm just going to keep sewing around the curve, because you know the front has a curve in front around the waistline. So I'm just going to keep sewing that. So now that that's done, I'm going to turn it to the other side also, and then start sewing again from the middle to the other end of my waist. So you can see that's that right there. Keep going, so everything aligns nicely. So yeah, that's done. That's all. So you can see that I'm done sewing that right now. So you just need to open up your seams and then you iron flat. Always remember to do that, guys. After every seam you sew, always iron. It makes a big world of difference to your completed outfit when you're done sewing. Now you do the same thing we have done to your two back pieces, and that's done. Now I'm just going to lay my back piece down now, and then lay my front piece on top of that, right sides together. So I'm going to sew my side seam, and that's that. You can see I've sewn the side seam, and the middle part right there is where I'm going to have my zipper line. And that's it pretty much. You can see the curve of my hip line right there, and really that's all. So to sew my drapes, I'm going to measure how long the drape is meant to be. So now I've already put my dress on my miniature mannequin. Now for the first drape, I'm going to start from the side right there. It goes under the bust, and then it goes up there, and then comes over the neckline, and then at my side right there, I'm going to leave a space, like a space of maybe 7 inches right there, and then measure all the way to the back of my dress. I hope you figured it out, or you got the drift of what I just explained. Now after measuring, the length of my drape is about 19 inches. So yeah, that's that. So the length of my drape is 19 inches. I'm going to cut that out appropriately. So the width of your drapes can be however you want. So if you're going to fold it, maybe you can use like maybe 20 inches length, or 20 inches width rather. And of course you have to fold it, so because once you fold it and you sew all the raw edges, you have you end up with 10 inches. So that 10 inches, we'll be using that to pleat our drapes onto our dress. Now for the kind of fabric you need to use for your drapes, if you look at the design picture, you would see that it's an organza fabric, but it's not the regular organza fabric, but the kind of stiff organza fabric, because that's what gave the drape the structure that is on it. So just research, just check out more about stiff organza fabric. So I don't have stiff organza fabric right here, or that would have shown you what that looks like. So I'll be using this crinkly paper to make my drapes. So this crinkly paper you're seeing on the table, this pink stuff you're seeing on the table, is not a fabric but a paper, and it's going to help give my drapes the structure it needs. So yeah, I'm going to cut two of that, one for this side, one for the other side, so you can see pretty much. Now I'm going to start attaching this onto my mannequin now. So now to attach, I'm going to pleat my fabric as you can see me doing. So I'm going to pleat it at the ends. You can see for that one we have like about 3 pleats, so I'm going to pleat 3 pleats onto my fabric, and now I'm going to attach to my dress. So I'm going to place it on my under bust, you can see that, and then I'm going to cross it over under my bust and go to the center right there. So I'm going to pin that down, you can see that, pinning that down, and then I'm going to cross it over my neckline right there and stop at the side seam. So at the side seam you just measure about 8 or 7 inches like I mentioned earlier, you leave that out, you can see, and then you cross the rest over to your back zipper line. So pretty much that's that. So I'm just going to pin that down right there, you can see that. So that's that for one part of the drape. So you see that's the part where your sleeve or where you can put your hand into. Now for the second drape, I'm going to pleat that also. And if you look at the picture, the pleats is, I think we had only like about 2 or 1 pleats on that. So I'm just going to pleat 1 or 2 pleats on this one before I now attach to my dress, before I start placing it onto my dress. So now you can see that now I'm going to place it from this other side here. I'll place it right there and see I'll place that over at the side. So I'm pinning that down right there. Now I'm going to cross it over that point, cross it over. I'll make sure it covers up the first drape line right there, and then I'm going to cross it over. I'm just pinning that now. Now I'm just going to cross it over, and then I go up to my neckline right there. You can see what I'm doing. So I'll pin that also right there. So at that side again, like I mentioned earlier, you have to leave out about 7 inches for your sleeve. So once you do that, you pin that, and then everything crosses over to your zipper line. So I hope you got the drift. So you can just rewatch what I just showed you. You can just rewatch it just to get the illustration. So because my fabric is a paper and would tear off if I try to sew it, that's why I'm pinning it onto my actual mannequin. So for you, when you're sewing, please sew the ones that go into the side seam, sew it into the side seam. The one that crosses over your neckline, sew it onto your neckline. And the end that goes into your zipper line, you also sew it into your zipper line, if you get what I mean. So you pretty much just like sew it in onto your dress rather. So yeah, that's that. So this completes it. Don't forget to tap the subscribe button below your screen, tap the like button also, and turn on the notifications bell so you don't miss any of my upcoming tutorials when I post them. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.